Hi everyone, that clip in the beginning was a clip of a farmhouse from a museum which explores life many, many years ago and what life was like for the people who first lived in that farmhouse, which is sort of like this book we're going to read today called Farmhouse. It explores the history of a farmhouse. It's written and illustrated by Sophie Blackall. Here's our front cover and our title page. Over the hill at the end of the road, by a glittering stream that twists and turns, stands a house. Look at this beautiful landscape, and there's a farmhouse where 12 children were born and raised, where they learned to crawl in the short front hall, where they posed arranged on the wooden stairs and were measured with marks over the years. So a large family lived here. Lots of kids. Maybe you've done that at your house where you've seen how you've grown over the years with marks on the wall. Where they carved potatoes and dipped them in paint to pattern the walls with flowers and leaves and painted the cat, about which they lied. It's kind of a neat way, instead of wallpaper, they used carved out potato stamps and decorated the walls that way. And they may have accidentally painted the cat's tail. Oops. For which they were scolded, and maybe they cried. And they were enfolded in forgiving arms in the serious room where the organ was played and speeches were made. But if they weren't even sorry at all, they were sent to their rooms. So they said, "I'm sorry about the cat," well, they were forgiven. Otherwise, they were sent to their room. So look at that. They're all kind of gathered together in that room. Where they pored over books about planets and stars, and they climbed into beds where they dreamed of Mars, or they dreamed of cats, or the distant sea. So we've got lots of kids sharing a room. It's such a large family, having lots of dreams. And whispered secrets, played truth or dare, lost their teeth and brushed their hair, where they kept collections of tin toy cars, of feathers and bones and movie stars, where they hung prize ribbons for champion cows that lived in the barn behind the house. So their bedrooms are personal to them. They've got things they like, things they've accomplished, things that are special to them. They were milked twice a day, no matter the weather, at dawn and at dusk by one child or another, who shivered and grumbled as they crossed the yard, or liked being alone with the flaming cloud, depending on the season, the day, and the child. So milk cows have to be milked twice a day, no matter what. Some kids enjoy it, and some kids don't, depending on the day, the weather, how they're feeling. And they fed the calves and mucked out the stalls and forked the hay into giant piles and fished for trout in the glimmering stream that changed shape from year to year. Yeah, if you're growing up on a farm, you have chores to do. Lots of work to keep those animals happy. And walking home with their rods and flies, they picked gnarled apples and to turn into pies. Looks like they've got a big apple tree growing there. They're used to make apple treats. And dragged in mud from the fields outside, so they shook the rug and scrubbed the floors and listened to their mothers and did their chores and set the table. So it looks like they all have to pitch in to keep the house and farm in working order. And bowed their heads and dished up soup and tore up bread. Yeah, and they shared They shared meals together. I'm sure that was really important, supper time. And took turns tending to the youngest one, who lay with a fever and spotted tongue. As they watched, they darned their socks and sewed on buttons that once were shells in the faraway sea that they've never seen. And they waited for spring, which eventually came, as it did every year, with blossoms and rain, which leaked through the holes that had grown in the roof, collecting in bowls and pans and pails, staining the wall in the short front hall with the flowers and leaves and measures and marks. So it looks like in this scenario, the little baby has gotten sick, and they're all sort of watching over, making sure that child's going to be okay. And the house is starting to show its age. The roof is leaking and sort of leaking on that painted wall that they made. From the children who all grew up in this house, who went off to school, or to work on a farm, or to drive a truck, or train as a nurse, or study the stars, or to have babies themselves, until one day, the youngest child, who was quite old now, took a last look around and picked up her case and opened the door. So all those children went on to have lives of their own, different lives, different careers, different paths that they took. The youngest one was just a baby, this baby here. Well, now she's an old woman. And the house is old too. She's going somewhere. Let's find out. And stepped outside and into a car where her sister was waiting to drive to the sea, which they'd always wanted to see. There she goes. And the house gave a sigh and slumped on the stones, which caused a slight lean in its beams and its bones. So the door swung open, let in the breeze. So the house is getting older. It's off of its foundation now. Now no one's there to be the caretaker of it. The door has been left open. And welcomed the rain that rotted the floor, where a sapling grew right next to the stove, where the wallpaper peeled like onion skins and drifted about on the fallen leaves, and the button that was once a shell in the sea. So nature sort of has taken over this house. There's leaves and animals amongst the things that were once precious to them. And the house is becoming a little bit more damaged by the parlor organ that rattled with nuts, put there by a squirrel with rather a fuss, which startled down the swallows that fed the moths that fluttered and flew all over the house. There was even a bear in the basement one year who slept there all winter until the spring. So now animals are using this house as a refuge, place to hibernate, place to store things. Do you remember this organ which they were playing? Let's see if I can quickly go back to that page. See, when they once lived there, the little girl is playing it. Well, now it's been neglected, forgotten. The squirrels are using it. Which is when I came and cut a path through prickly burdock and nettles and grass, and found what remained of the old farmhouse, where I filled my arms with wallpaper scraps and rain-soaked books and brittle maps and mud-caked dresses and handkerchiefs and a button that was once a shell in the sea. So the author of this story is saying, I came upon this farmhouse when it was in this sort of dilapidated state, and I found the treasures and mementos there. And back at my desk, I spread them all out and cherished my gifts from the falling down house. I I sharpened my pencil and mixed up some paint and dipped my brush and cut some shapes and began to imagine the things that took place. So the things that she collected while she was there inspired her to say, what is the story of these things? What is the story of this house? In the home where 12 children were born and raised, where they ate and slept and worked and played and laughed and loved and grew quite old, where they'll live on now in this book that you hold, like your stories will, so long as they're told. So these people became alive once more through her story, through this book that we're sharing together. Here's a note from the author about the creation of this book and some photographs from the real house that inspired it. I just loved that book. I thought it was so beautiful about connecting ourselves to people who have lived before us and realizing that they had lives that were so important to them, little treasures that, just like we have, that have meaning to them. And we aren't so different. Our lives may be different. We may have different things in our homes, different technologies, different size families. But we are connected through time. And if we can go to a place and imagine what it was like there before, what was it like for the people who lived there? And museums are a great place for that, but you don't have to go to a museum. You can think about your own home. What was it like, the people who lived here before us? You can even think about your own school. What other students might have sat at your desk? And what are they doing now? What was it like when they were here? I love thinking about that, and it connects us to one another, and it connects us to our history, our ancestors, our shared collective community as humans. And I think it's so important that we think about others, we think about their stories, and we help share them and their stories and our stories. And there's so much beauty to be had there, so much love. Each home, that home was filled with love, and we can fill our homes and our life with love too. Thanks for reading and learning with me. I hope you have a beautiful day. See you soon.